Thank you for joining us. Our top story tonight, Idaho's longest serving death row inmate is set to be executed in less than a month. A judge signed a new death warrant today for Thomas Creech. Our Jude Binkley shows us from the newsroom with what we know. Jude?
Well, Hunter Creech was sentenced to death for killing a fellow inmate at Idaho and was convicted of killing 4 other men. He's been on death row for more than 40 years, and last February's execution attempt failed.
What they encountered in some instances was an access issue.
Less than 1 year after a failed execution attempt, Thomas Creech is now scheduled to go back to the execution table. Creech was originally scheduled to be executed in February, but the execution was unsuccessful because Idaho medical staff couldn't establish an IV line. During an interview with KTVB in June, Creech said Idaho knew it was a challenge to get needles in his veins.
They've known this even when they did blood draws on me for diabetes and stuff. They had a hard time accessing the veins. So my attorneys had warned them about this, but apparently they didn't take it to heart.
The new death warrant comes 1 day after Idaho updated its protocol for executions, adding a preparation room where medical staff will first try to establish a standard IV line. If that doesn't work, they'll try to establish a central line, which is longer and has a larger tube than regular IV lines.
It runs a greater risk because you're going into larger veins, so if something goes wrong, it's going to go catastrophically wrong.
Death penalty researchers say the state sending someone back for a second lethal injection attempt is fairly unprecedented.
I'm not aware that a central line has been used in any other execution in recent years.
Idaho will be the first state to attempt twice to execute somebody by lethal injection.
KTVB spoke with the granddaughter of one of Creech's victims, who says the warrant is good news and she's ready for the execution to be over, adding every time it's drawn out, it adds a little more pain to the situation. The Federal Defender Services of Idaho released a statement saying in part they are, quote, heartbroken and angered the state would try to execute Creech again using a similar process and team before conducting an official review of what led to the failed execution.
One of the things that's clear after state fails to carry out an execution or botches an execution is that there needs to be some public oversight. We need to find out what went wrong. And that's something that should not be an internal only investigation.
Idaho isn't the only state to send someone to be executed after a failed attempt. Alabama had 2 executions this year after initial lethal injections failed. Hunter, however, Alabama used nitrogen gas executions for their second attempts, while Idaho is going back to the lethal injection.
Yeah, really interesting update. Thank you, Jude.